I envy your youth and your beauty is. Good morning.
All right, I am gonna call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. We'll do roll call. Myself, Caleb Feige is here. Pam Summers.
Here.
Tim Rhodes.
Here.
Keith Lipper.
Here.
Judy Austin.
Here.
Paul Varga.
Here.
Rob Chernick. Not here. And Bill Becker.
Here.
So since everyone's here, we're not going to.
And I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Catherine.
Excellent, Michelle.
And since everyone is here, we will not see alternates. So then next is just gonna be communications. Don't really have anything else besides what we have on the agenda.
I can tell you that, pre-construction meetings are starting for the bridges that we have, that we're going to be fixed. And those are, and that's, there's a pre-construction meeting that starts in June. And that is for, Boston, the two bridges are Boston Hollow Road #2 bridge over Bigelow Brook and Axe Factory Road #2 bridge over Bigelow Brook. And I provided information to the board previously about that there's one is a $4 million construction project and the other one is a $3 million construction project. And as part of that, the town needs to, I use the word front we need to pay the construction costs each month as they come in and submit the bills to the state. And we can look for reimbursement within 60 days for submission. But we do need to, in a sense, float the money. And or also get a loan. And then we'll end up paying interest. But the reality is that this town cannot afford to replace such bridges on their own. And the program that the state's put forth, DPW's put forth, is fantastic.
So those are just meetings to start the discussion.
What they've done is they've gotten through the majority of design on at least one. I don't know if it's both of them. And the state takes care of all the design, takes care of costs for the design. And state and feds. This is 80% funded by the feds and 20% by the state. So the state takes care of the design work, and then the town, in a sense, oversees the construction work and submits the bills to the state. But when you think about a $4 million project and its construction period is probably somewhere between 7, 8, 9 months because of weather, then you kind of get a sense of how quickly it gets done and how much money we have to fund. And I'm assuming that when we do that, that the highest bills will be in the first few months because of any materials.
Okay, so next is gonna be approve the minutes for the regular meeting, May 7th, 2026.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, first we'll do aye, so Pam, Judy, and myself. Any opposed? Okay, and then any abstentions?
Aye.
So since there's 3, is that?
Well, if you only have 3, you don't have enough.
Well, because Bill was here, but he can't vote because he's not seated on it.
You can wait till the next meeting.
So, okay. So then we'll have to wait for next meeting to see if
Do you have 3 votes? 3 votes is enough to pass a motion.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay, because it
Oh,
was,
we do.
and then it was either Rob or Bill that can vote on it, so we would have to wait until one of them gets seated to then vote on. Okay.
Shouldn't be big.
All right, so then we'll table that for next meeting and we will, not follow through with that. Okay, so next will be public comment. Any public comment? Yes, you may. Your name,
Good evening, Edward Carvalho, Pompey Road.
you said Edward.
Yeah, Edward.
Edward, sorry.
So, just talking about next year's mill rate, I would urge the Board of Finance to consider utilizing the available state funding, including the ECS funding, as revenue to help offset current projected mill rates, rather than reserving it for future years. Residents are already facing increased costs across the board, and providing a meaningful tax relief now would have an immediate positive impact on families and taxpayers in this community. While I may not be fully aware of the board's long-term plans for these funds, my understanding is that the intention of the funding was to help reduce the burden on taxpayers, not simply increase any town reserves. While planning for the future is important, there also needs to be consideration for the financial impact on residents that the residents are experiencing today. Because even though it may be a modest relief, with the spending increases and the recent reassessments, utilizing these funds in this manner would at least demonstrate an effort to lower tax. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Luke on Zoom? Luke, can you hear us? You raised your hand. Going once? Okay, we'll come back to you. Anybody else have a public comment?
I would assume that being an alternate, I would speak during the meeting time.
Yes, you could talk about the topic, but you just can't vote on anything if there
That's
is.
my understanding.
Yes. Okay, so then with that, I am going to close public comment. So then next for new business is going to be the discussion of the 26-27 mill rate that was posted or voted on last meeting. So first, I just wanted to bring up why we're discussing it, and then kind of go through the analysis that I did, more of at a high level, and then we can discuss it as a board. Hold on 1 second. Let me just see. I'm going to put something in the chat. My audio is not working. Okay.
I don't think that's anything you were doing.
Yes, no.
That's on his end.
Yeah, I just want to make sure in case we did put something in there that. Okay, so getting back to it, so we're here just to discuss some possible I guess repercussions that could happen to where we are using the additional funds that are coming from the state as revenue to reduce the mill rate. So let me pull up. So just to go over the mill rate calculation, again. So what we did was for state revenues down here, we added the additional 163,000 that is going to be coming from the state, which is going to be the ECS funds and then a portion of the Mohegan. But in total, it's going to be 163,000. So that increased revenues, and then in result, our mill rate reduced down to 27.8 mils. So prior, it was at 28.147. So this spreadsheet here, because we went through it, what is looking at individual homes and their old assessed value with their new assessed value and how the mill rate change is going to affect taxes for this coming year. So this is as March 26th. So before we took into effect of this additional funding of, we're looking at a median new tax bill of $67.52. So now with this additional funding and the reduction of the mill rate, we're looking at a median tax bill of $6,668. So we're looking at about $83 of a reduction in taxes on the taxpayer. So then what I did is I just compared with that mill rate to this new one. And so it's going to be $138,000 of a reduction from the homeowners. So that's kind of the impact. So if you see here, so changes, so this is the number of homes and the tax ranges, because this is what we were looking at for our reval. So with the reval, most homes are going to be at that 10-15%. So now we're actually reducing the higher increases by 149 homes are going to be now less than what was projected before. So the other thing that I wanted to show and that I considered with that wasn't necessarily in our discussion was using these funds instead of for the mill rate, it would be for the CNR fund. So we would receive this, keep it in the undesignated, and then transfer it to the CNR fund and not have it affect the mill rate at all. So my first thought would be, well, how is that going to affect our percentage? So that percentage that we're supposed to have of the budget expenditures in that undesignated fund balance. So I wanted to hopefully have current numbers of the funds that are in the undesignated and the CNR. And so those are actually not available. And so I was advised just to try and use the June 30th, so the audited final numbers. But I'm not quite sure how to get to where we can look at the balance as a current state if we're looking at last year's. But I just put this together. So we had our undesignated balance here. This was the expenditures for 2025. So we were sitting at 17%. One of the highlights was this past year, we decided that 500,000 is going to be moved to the CNR fund. So then the things to consider, I guess, with using this money for the mill rate instead of to the CNR is going to be, well, there could be we know that there's going to be an increase in capital expenditures for next year just based off of the capital improvement plan. and that there's going to be an increase in roof bond interest, the loan interest, and now with the bridges. So those are some things that were not brought up at our meeting last week. So I wanted to open up the table for all of the board members to give their opinion, to make sure that, you know, all avenues are at least looked at, to where we're not necessarily going to be putting ourselves in a negative state, or if we are handling this money in the best way. So with that, if there's, Bill, let's have you go after somebody. Yeah.
Go last.
Yeah, you go last. I saw your hand. We know.
It's okay.
If I could make a comment,
Sure.
Michelle, go to the rest.
How about, is it okay if we'll hear from everybody and then we'll kind of have an open discussion after that? So,
Actually, I think we'll do it.
oh, okay. Then sure, you can do that. Go ahead.
All right, so, I had, actually asked that you take another look at this. Because I want to make sure that you are fully aware of what the impacts will be. I don't necessarily disagree with your decision, okay? I just want you as a board to understand what the impacts could be next year. Okay, first of all, this is the second year of a two-year budget and it's election year. I believe that's the only reason we got this money. It is not guaranteed for next year. I have tried to find out how long you can use it. In other words, does it have to be spent or distributed or whatever you want to call it within this fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year or not? You'll receive, the funds will be received on October 1st, 2026. I have reached out to our representatives, Senator Gordon, I've reached out to Pat Boyd. I've not gotten an answer on that because guess what? In the legislation, it doesn't say how long you can use that money. So in terms of putting it into the undesignated fund or putting it essentially, leave it in there, okay? Or putting it in the CNR, not clear. Because we have to spend it right away, then no. The fact that there's such an increase in the mill, essentially because of reval, such an increase overall for folks, I certainly appreciate the fact that you've looked at that and you're trying to alleviate that as best you can. I would like to remind you that the legislative body, which is the voting public, made a decision and they approved all 5 aspects of the budget. So they knew what was going to be happening and they were the majority, so to speak. That's just a side comment. Again, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I know that this year we had such a big increase because we're trying to take care of our fire department folks. Otherwise it would not have been as big as it is. Next year, we'll still have to do that. Still maintain all of that. So that's not going to go down. What we will have is we'll have an increase, as you indicated, in our bond, okay, bond payments. So for this upcoming year, it's $70,000. For next year, the year after that, it's going to be about 103 and change. And after that, it's going to be 200,000 and change. So I want you as a board to remember that we all have the schedules for the bond payments. Okay, and what was decided by the CEO and the treasurer is to go with the one that ended where we would end up paying the lowest total amount. So it's a 15-year bond with 6-month interest. But again, I wanted you to remember that that number is going to go up in the general government budget. And you can't put it in capital improvement, whatever, it has to be in general government. The other thing is, again, we don't know what's going to happen with fuel or whatever. I will tell you that this fiscal year, I'm not sure how close we're going to come to spending all the money that's been allocated for this fiscal year because we had to cinch our belts so much last year. So I don't believe there will be a lot left over to increase the CNR, to move money over to increase CNR. So I want you to at least be aware that that could happen. As far as the school and general government in general, the cost of living keeps going up. The price of everything keeps going up. It never goes down. So you can anticipate there's going to be increases in the general government and the school budgets because of that. Everybody tries to do their very best, and I know that some of you have participated in, I know Cam has, and actually sitting in when the board, looking at the general government budget in a very, very detailed way. We even sat in a board of selectmen where we were trying to come up with, what ought to be acceptable, and we absolutely have to have. So it's not a faultless process by any means. I believe that the board of selectmen actually had 8-9 meetings where we did exactly that, line by line. So again, next year I anticipate there's a number of things that are going to need to go up, contracts go up. I'm about, the board of selectmen will be going into negotiations with the union and the for a in all likelihood, is a 1 to 3 year contract. And we have to have that contract finalized by June 30th, 2026. So whatever we come up with, agree to, is going to hit us in this upcoming year. We did some planning around that, with some money in contingency. But we don't know how bad that's going to go. And for anybody who is out there who thinks that because they didn't get an increase for whatever company they work for, is not a factor when we look at the people that work here that support this town. It's not a factor when we're dealing with the public works guys that are out in the middle of the road. Any more than it would be for our fire department. If we were, paying all of that and all of their costs for personnel. So, and where they are for emergencies and all of that. We have pared down the people in our departments as much as we can. We've actually taken and cut part-time personnel for supports in the assessor's office, in the tax collector's office, and also in the town clerk's office. Part-time. We brought it down. We didn't erase it completely because you always want to leave a little money there for your line item. Ultimately, just goes through. So, and we're looking at how we're going to do that support. Maybe finding a way to share in more of our resources. There's negotiations that have to go along that. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand, as I had described, those two bridge projects and having to front the money. I saw in the meeting minutes, and sorry, I was down in Savannah, eating my way through Savannah while you were doing this. Actually, I was on a plane coming back. The thought of taking the $360,000 or whatever. The thought of taking $360,000 out of your undesignated fund or the undesignated fund would put us in a position where we couldn't flow much of any money, particularly for those projects. So I just want you to understand that that is also something that in terms of consideration as you look forward to whatever you're doing from the undesignated. You'd also, I believe, bring yourself, I think you pointed out, below the threshold of what helps us keep our credit rating, which is really important when we go for loans. And if we have to go for a loan for the bridges, we want to make sure our credit rating is still up. Otherwise, we can get stopped. So from my perspective, I just want the Board of Finance to understand these are factors that are, I've looked at, the other selectmen have looked at, and we want you to be fully aware, because when next year comes up, okay, that is on record that these are the factors that could affect what happens with next year's taxes. And I do applaud you, all of you, for trying to look out for our public, our taxpayers. It's what you should be doing, and I think that, I don't want to influence your decision. It's more that I want you to be aware. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. Anybody who want to start with comments? Board members?
I don't imagine we're in a position right now to have even a ballpark figure of what we're looking at.
You actually need to work with auditors. That's the issue. Because it's a moving target. And I don't want to say it's impossible to keep up with. If we have more staff, we could do that. But it is very difficult to keep up with that while you're doing it. So it is marked down, and you have it in your, reports, because they came out of the system as to what the status of the items that are open in the capital projects and purchases that are open. You have the status in your reports. So you might want to take another look at that and go, okay, wait a minute, I don't have this piece of information about that thing. And we will help you however you need to be helped.
So you're saying for like the CNR funds?
Yes,
Like you take the balance that was audited for 25, and then you're just gonna take whatever.
current status of those projects.
Look for every project and see where they're at.
What we can do is we can produce another report for you. But the payments and whatever for these things go out at different points in time. And for example, we're reserving the money for the fire truck.
Right, and the lighting project is complete, but we haven't got the invoice. So things like that, and so like, when they come through, they get paid. So right now, that money's in there, then it gets paid out. It just moves over time, that's the problem.
And there's a kind of a delay, like you said, with invoices. So I wouldn't be making that the linchpin of the decision. The deciding factor. And I think you did the right thing. You moved 500,000 into CNR. And when you did, you were looking at what's it going to cost for CNR for fiscal year 2026, 2027. And I'm trying to remember what the number was. I thought it was like, is it 700,000? I forget. So it was taking some money that was already in CNR and pushing it all into it. One of my concerns is, okay, this year, I think we're going to come in pretty close to not what we've seen in the past. In the past, I've seen, and this has always been concerning to me, is that at one point in time, we had $200,000 left over from general government. I call that overtaxing. Okay. And it's happened over the years because we make our best educated guess. And we also typically don't have all the information from the state. You can even see what's happened to this, where they did change after we'd already had a referendum. We never have the numbers before the referendum.
Yeah, because I mean, even, I guess now I'm not showing it, but last year we had 563,000 over what was budgeted as revenue.
Yes,
So-
revenue.
So that's why we moved over.
Some of that
500,000.
was reimbursed, state reimbursed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
that's the thing that people don't understand, everybody's like, oh, you overtaxed by 500,000. No, not in this case. There was a return of project money that we had spent out of CNR that was coming the way the project worked. It has to come back to the general government to unfund it, and then you can look at that.
And I've sat in the seats you sit in. Okay. So, and even then I was concerned about how much seemed to be left over each year. We had different situations where we had manna fall from heaven, which is kind of what's just happened with this one. That was unexpected. Or to the delay. So, again, I'm not sure how close we're gonna come to staying in the black with this year. We've had almost, what is it, 28,000 in unexpected repair of a truck versus buying a new one. And we've also had our legal fees this year. That is one line item that's going way over. And because we have some lawsuits, public planning and zoning there's some lawsuits that have been brought. I know that there's a good chance that we may pursue a suit against some parties involved in the school group. But it becomes, how much is it worth? And there's, what's the other one? We have another one that we anticipate could come up. So I know that there's two for planning and zoning, and then there's a couple more that could happen. And even in the budget that we put forth for next year for legal, we did our best guess. We actually started parsing out where the legal support was needed in which departments. Planning and zoning is harder to deal with because those ones just come up and they go on. And in fact, there was a meeting last night. Zoning board of appeals. I understand it went 3.5 hours, and our attorney just returned to the other side of this. So, and the attorney's fees, their rates went up. And Halloran and Sage is an excellent firm. We've gotten great support from them. But I've already seen that it's gone up. That's why we tried to break it out by departments so that we could really, the departments would be more responsible and be giving us a heads up when they dump it, as opposed to having it in one bucket that looked like the board of selectmen was managing, because we're not managing that inspection. So I anticipate that we're going to come in much closer to what our budget was approved at than maybe in the past when it was, we had 200,000, 100,000, 500,000 bad things left over to put into CML. So again, not to influence you to change your decision, because I don't think that would be a good idea. But just to make sure that you are really aware of this is what we're looking at on the other end of it, and are informed.
Maybe let's hear from the members who weren't at the meeting last week, just to see if, since you guys hopefully reviewed the minutes, at least saw, our thought process, when we discussed it, Pam, Bill, Robin, Judy, and I, of using it to reduce the mill rate, thinking of more of the reval, instead of all of these other things. So let's try and get your reactions, I guess, versus what's going on now.
Yeah, I don't think it's right, but
I can't, I'm
oh,
sorry,
I'm
I can't
sorry,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. I don't think it's a good idea. I just, you don't know what you're gonna face. And also, I think it creates an expectation with people that it's going to be there. And it's like, you did it this year, why not next year? And if the money isn't there, then why not? And it just, and I think that I also look at it having an extra money is, I call it a rainy day fund, because you don't know what could happen. And we have a lot of unknowns right now. And I think if we do anything on any kind of a large scale, certainly I would not be afraid. I think what you gotta do is 100% correct. The governor and the legislature, the state legislature specifically did it for that purpose. It actually stated in the state.
Actually, what they did was it was supposed to be support for ECS or it was school funding, and then some for MM.
The increased support for school districts and municipalities
Yes.
designed to close critical.
And then they added that line.
Without forcing communities to raise property taxes. That's a direct quote from his president.
From who?
So, from the governor's president.
Yeah.
That is a direct quote. I'm reading it.
I'm sorry, I just read the legislation.
Yeah. Oh, the legislation is a bunch of. whatever.
They just went back.
They had to go back and fix it 3 times, right? Because that's what happened.
And
But
they
that's his quote, number one. Number two, when we adopted the budgets and we put the referendum forward, we were not expecting $162,000. So the problems that you just talked about were gonna happen anyway. So to say that, oh, now we found this $163,000 that the governor gave us, that we paid the state taxes, by the way, because that's what comes from. And say, oh, we're gonna take that and put it aside because we're gonna have this problem. Those problems existed. I do not think it's fair to the taxpayers of this town to say, oh, the governor took your state taxes, gave it back to us, and we're just gonna put it in our pocket. I think you did the right thing. Reduce the mill rate. There's a lot of people that have already been hit really hard. We know that. I was part of the reason, and I feel guilty about it, but it has to be done. And Catherine's right. Things are gonna continue to go up. We just have to make sure we explain that to people. And to be totally honest, if we need to make capital project decisions and cut something that maybe we don't need, then that's what we're gonna have to do. That's our job. I just think that in this case, and yes, it also is election year stunt, but in this case, here's the other problem. And I will tell you that this will happen. If towns do not use the funding to help produce tax burdens, we will definitely not get it next year, because that's exactly what will happen when the legislature talks about it. Well, they didn't use it. They town of Ashford picked their $162,000 and put it in the file so they can do something else. That wasn't the intent. It's written out very clearly. The governor, and in this case, even Senator Gordon said the same thing. That's what it was.
He did not actually get back to me when I tried to get some answers about this.
Well, if you're talking about how you can spend it,
I will tell you, Commissioner of Education, they had a presentation that was done to the school superintendents on May 8th, which is after all this. And incredibly enough, what it said was this was to offset ECS. Really ECS oriented, whatever, and it had to go into a special fund. And it didn't say anything about reducing the mill rate. So what I think is they did this quickly. I understand that, but I don't think all of the communications got out to the right people. Because when you've got the Commissioner of Education saying something on May 8th and presenting it to all the school superintendents, you kind of go, what? I got the presentation. And it was just passed on to me as a courtesy by Cindy Ford. So, and she was in that meeting. So, again, it was done very quickly. I definitely feel it was because it's an election year. And the other part of it is throughout the whole write-up, it said, this is a one-time thing. So what we all need to do is we need to put pressure on our representatives and anybody else to get more ECS funding in particular, and to make sure that they take care of that going forward. Because they've been not doing it in the past. The formula needs to be fixed. And if I understand correctly, they couldn't get it fixed fast enough. So, or an agreement fast enough, so they did this as a kind of a safety net, a Band-Aid. Thank you, that's better. And so, yes, we need to apply a lot of pressure on our representatives to get monies next year.
Tim, do you have anything? Tim, can you hear me?
Oh, apologies. I didn't know. I thought you were talking to somebody else for a second. Um, yeah, I'm torn. Like was just being said, it's written clearly. It's intended to reduce the tax burden on the taxpayers. Um, but there is a certain amount of it that feels like, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Are we just going to see these increases next year? And, to Paul's point, yeah, we're going to see increases next year, and we always will because nothing ever goes down. Um, but I mean, I would have to say that we should use it for the purpose in which it was intended, would be my stance on it.
Okay, I'm just writing it down.
Yep.
Yes, everybody great. So, I guess I'll open it to Judy and Pam and Bill too. If you have anything else to say about what we talked about earlier.
Well, if I understand it correctly, people's taxes aren't gonna go down that much if we apply this money to the budget this year. You were saying some people $88, some $150. I think people would be looking more towards, let's get 1,000 or 2 off of my tax bill. And to tell them $88, I don't think that's gonna make them feel that much better. And, I highlighted what Paul read from Lamont. For the town, it was almost $25,000 to go towards, reducing the taxes. The school, 138. I agree with Pete. I think it should be saved pending what could happen next year, because it's gonna be a lot worse, I think, next year.
Judy, do you have anything?
Well, prior to the vote, I had the same thought I had probably, well, for next year. But there was a lot of confusion at the state level with this whole thing. Some people were interpreting it like, Kayla, you did last week, that there was an additional $40,000 put onto last year's ECS funding. And the state came out with an article that a lot of people were having problems determining if it was an add-on to last year's, or if the whole fund, the 163, was additional to what we already were getting. So it was put out really sloppy. People, like, different towns are having troubles with this, trying to interpret it. But as far as the future, um, I don't. I think we have to be really careful about saying that our funding is going to be in excess um, for things, like we're already going over budget and stuff, because like for legal fees for zoning, I mean, in the budget, there was what, 20 something thousand dollars put for somebody to scan items into the system. Could that be put off till next year and those fundings could be put towards the legal fees? I don't know. But I mean, there's things to be thinking about. I mean, if we're really concerned about helping the citizens, uh, you know, control this a little bit better. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Right, which is, if you're gonna describe the new taxes versus old taxes, if you're gonna go really black and white on this, the general government and the schools are new taxes. The capital improvement plan is old taxes and any additional revenue that comes in.
You'd have to move it back and then,
Yeah, you have to move it back and do a further reduction. So that, when we look at capital improvement plan, it's an old animal. And I know, Paul, you sit on that board.
well, it was also voted on, but.
It was voted on, and we looked, and there was also some kind of requirement in terms of indexing as well
Yeah, that's been on
by
that,
the state.
that's been on that, but that plan was for where we've been kicking that a little while,
Mhm.
which is, I think, why we decided this, we need to get it done.
Okay. Yeah, so then also too, to just reiterate Judy's, comment. So when I saw it from Ned Lamont, I thought it was in, like, that was the total that we were gonna get. So since we already budgeted for 110,000, I thought we were only gonna get an additional 40. But then when we discussed it, Bill said, and we looked at the different articles online, and so then that's why we thought that it was instead in addition to, so that it was the 163. So that's where that came from.
Well, to Kevin's point, it was really very cool.
Yeah,
And again, they went back 3 times to fix the legislation, and the last one was what, the night before they closed the session.
yeah, exactly. So,
That was great.
Yeah, Kayla, you weren't the only one. A lot of towns were saying the same thing, the same exact scene. So I don't think anybody's really hashed it out to the perfect solution yet. That's why I was saying, why don't we wait and see what happens?
all right, Bill, load it on us.
I think all the discussion has been, I think, very excellent. Catherine, as usual, has a real good handle on all this. But most of the discussion, ironically, applies to our next budget cycle. The way the state handled this, and given the situation that all the budgets passed and nothing could be changed with a past budget except the revenue side. And so it became genuinely a mechanical, almost in a certain sense, irreversible process. You can't pretend that the revenue doesn't exist because it clearly does. So adding it to the revenue line before the mill rate is established is sort of a bureaucratic reflex. So the ramifications, like a good example of bad ramifications, was my motion to use the 360 to reduce the mill rate. That definitely has ramifications that Judy was very articulate on. And you take out of the undesignated fund balance, sooner or later you got to balance that cuts. So I have no problem with the Board of Finance decision defeating that. But as far as recognizing the revenue, that's basically a done deal. So the discussion that we're having tonight, I think, is very good. And I think it sets us up for the next year's budget cycle. And what has been mentioned before at Board of Finance meetings, I think it's critical that the Board of Finance has a real good handle of what these fund balances are, what's not designated, what's committed, uncommitted, what are the liquidity issues that the treasurer faces. These are things that we have to be very familiar with, along with the expense side of the budget process.
So if you were to step back, anyway, if we had known that this was coming in before making final decisions on what was gonna be put forth to the public. To be quite candid, I think he would have taken that into account, and it would be a lower number. This was just a matter of timing.
Yep.
You would have also probably looked a little askance at how this came about and the fact that it's a 1 year only thing. And that it's an election year. But I think that if you stop and you just step back and you go, you know what? If you had known about that 3 weeks before, you would have applied it and the mill rate would be lower, right where you are.
And honestly, every year we go through this conversation about what we're actually get for ECS funding. It's a conversation that board has every time we meet, right? So, and like Catherine said, every year, you don't know the numbers, so we're using our best guess based on what we know that day. So yeah, I think you're right, we would. Because it could change next year, it could go up, it could go down. And then we have to deal with it.
And what's nice is sitting here discussing, I hadn't really thought about it that way. Until we were discussing, all of a sudden it popped in. So the fact that you're having the discussion, looking at this and getting educated and educating yourselves is, I think, terrific.
I do think that as, you know, we talked about the rebound hit a lot of people hard, and yeah, you're right, Ben, maybe a lot of people hard, but for some people we do.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I think that it's not so much the dollar amount in this case, it's the action that speaks really loud. I'm already, people are already chasing down the street. So I don't want to, I just think that if we would have known about it in March or February, we would have been revenue, if we would have just put it in that.
Yeah.
Chart just like we did, and we wouldn't even be having.
And you also would have done the same thing to do if you'd been on the month to see.
Right, same thing, right.
Okay. So I guess from here, we're gonna keep the mill rate as we discussed last meeting. It's going to be at 27.8. And we can continue to look at these throughout, especially the summer, all of these issues and topics that are going to be involved in the next year's budget process. And then my thought is, so when's the next time we can get the balances for these funds? So like the undesignated and CNR.
Let me work with Sherry. Sherry, Sherry's been doing double duty. She has been my support until I have someone to come in and fill the executive's assistant to be able to swap and slot. While I was on vacation, she handled everything instead. We also have a member in the finance department who's out for. So the trying to come up with the numbers quickly is not necessarily as easy for her as you might think. So I'll work with her to see what we can come up with. Just to find a way to at least give the ballpark where we are as we move along. That would be good. I happen to know that some of the projects are done because when I was writing up the descriptions of the new capital improvement things, I also had written up the ones for the old ones. But we didn't have a final figure for the school budget, and we didn't have something that project or something else. So I didn't want to put up half-ass. So instead, I just didn't put that out there. And we'll go back, but she certainly didn't have time to do it then, and she has to have much time to do anything now.
I mean, that's fair, even if like by year end, you know, because those won't be necessarily audited, but at least you should have the balances by then.
Well, I mean, you'll have audited numbers by the end of the year.
Yeah, don't have auditing.
By June 30th?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, I meant
Year
fiscal
end.
year end.
I think one
Yeah.
thing is that, and Bill brought it up, is that the board members need to understand what all those different funds are and what they mean. And there's some funds that we talk about and people ask questions about, or even the public asks a question about, that are specific, that can only be used for certain things, and that's only one I
Exactly.
the additional tax revenue from the dispensary, those are things that we can look at and say to the board of selectmen and the town, this fund is for these purposes, let's take this project and check, and make sure we can use it correctly, and use it for that, so that's a way to offset some.
We actually do.
Yeah.
Upstairs,
I
we do look at that,
I do.
especially
too.
since we're on capital improvement.
But, the board here needs to understand how that works too, so that when something comes up and when the public asks you, why are they doing that? Well, this is how and why and how it's being, it's not, if it's coming from a specific fund that the state is driven, so to speak. We don't have a say in how it fits. We only have a say in what projects we use it for, but if it's specific.
And how the funds were set up originally, because there are some funds, the library fund,
Right.
you can't. In fact, we, like to allocate more money, maybe the band, you can't. And we don't even have all the documentation on it because it was set up more than 100 years ago. The one thing I would suggest is that you put out an amended mill rate page and update the package to be the final package for this town.
This.
So, yeah. And I can't remember if I said it before, but I'll say it again. I think that
Somebody knew.
this town, I started looking around, we put out more information in greater detail about the upcoming budget, town's budget, than anyone around us. They don't put out what you're buying out of paying for out of capital improvement. They don't put up the line by line for each of the budgets, the detail lines. They don't put up that at all. So there's no real explanation that goes with that, nor do their presentations put out something at a level of detail that, people can really query, ask questions about. I just want to make sure that you know that, and actually I'm going to start looking at some of the, like Vernon and some of these other places that are bigger, because I don't think they do put out that level of detail either.
Yeah, but that might be why our town voted the budgets through.
Well, I'd like to think so, and I think that splitting the questions helped in terms of people understanding what they were voting for. So, board, yes.
Judy, just to answer your question, yes, we did set the mill rate last week, and so this was just to discuss all of the, if there were any possible, future issues that came along with it, because, yes, we did discuss it, but not in this big detail.
Just a warning.
And to get everybody.
Just a warning, you should not be using chat as part of your meeting. It's one thing for someone to say, I can't hear, or you can't hear them. But it's another thing to have anything that is any kind of a thing like that in the chat, because the public will not see the chat. I'm just letting you know.
There's always something, isn't there?
I know, it sucks. But the reality is, think about just being transparent with the public.
All right.
Well, I would have spoke, but I didn't have my hand to raise on my screen, so excuse me.
Just talk.
Do what we do.
We'll let you talk. It's okay.
I don't have to be there, Catherine, if I can't, so I don't need that badgering either.
All right. So
Wait, I take exception to that. That wasn't badgering at all. That was what's legal, FOI. So no, I'm just letting you know, if I happen to see something, look,
Whatever.
it could have been anybody. There you go.
Public does use
What is that?
Just so you are like, public does use that.
Not
Any-
when, from the recording.
not on the. So yes, just to reiterate to, what Paul said, I had mentioned in the last few meetings of, especially during the summer when there's not too much activity going on, that is a good time for us all to get together, talk about the different funds, talk about the, some of the things coming up, and try and learn the financials and do more of a deep dive. So that way we do all understand, obviously, especially going into next year. So with that, I guess agenda items for the next meeting. Hopefully there won't be a next meeting. It'll be canceled. But as of right now, I guess just the only thing that I'll do is I'll make sure to amend the mill rate page, and then I'll go through the packet to have everything.
Your letter.
Yeah, oh, the letter, yeah. And then, do we have to post anything like in the newspaper, like to the public? Or like,
No, your minutes should do the trick.
so that, okay,
Okay.
not doing the official,
We can find other ways to get it out there to the public.
put on Facebook.
One thing I wanted to recommend, it was interesting going back through other budgets and how they're posted on the town website. And what we really probably want to do is a naming convention or whatever for the files that are put out there. Because it's very hard to sort through and find which is the most current, whatever. I used to do this in my IT career, was manage those kinds of sites. And so I'm going to suggest that some of them be renamed to indicate the date they occurred on. Okay, for example, what was put out there was April 24th, something happened and they put, the date on the front of the item name. And if that had been done with all of them, which nobody thinks of, then it would come up in sequence for people so that they could go, okay, where's the final version of this?
Yeah,
Okay,
makes sense.
because if you have something just named adopted at referendum, and now you put out another thing,
Yeah,
it's gonna say revised, and then, but there's also a revised thing for when you're working with things. So, just letting you know, and maybe we can talk about that offline,
yeah, just because I don't.
so the public can figure out where things are.
Exactly. Remarks for the good of the board. Thank you for everybody coming today, for us to discuss it. I think it's great that we were able to go through and now we've identified things to look at for next year and, going forward. And, I appreciate everybody's help and input in it. And
Thank you.
anything else? Yeah, okay. And with that, we'll do adjournment. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting over 8:03. Thank you.
Nice job.
Have a good night.
You too.
Right.
Good night.
All right.
I